I'm hanging out with my good friend, Parker Stiles, hardcore real estate investor, wholesaler, family man, man that lives on acreage, and he also has a hard money business. I'm blessed to be able to hang out with him today and talk about some real estate. So, Parker, how did you get into, real estate, wholesaling? Tell me your story of how you got started, sir.
Yeah, Anton, happy to be here, man. I got started about 10 years ago. I kind of always knew I wanted to go down that real estate road, but was just unsure which angle I wanted to take. Obviously, there's a lot of different angles when it comes to real estate investing. And I found out this a lot later when I was kind of going down the family tree. I found out I was a fourth generation real estate investor. So I thought that was kind of cool of continuing down that tree that everybody else did. But
Love it.
I just started off as an agent, kind of like most people do, but I didn't want to do the real estate or the residential route. I went and got my license and started with a brokerage in the industrial space, warehousing, stuff like that, working with tenants and landlords still. And that kind of taught me the ropes a little bit. And gosh, fast forward 6 months, I actually got fired from that job. My boss said that I was too entrepreneurial, whatever that meant in the time. I did get caught writing yellow letters at my desk one day for houses that I was driving home on my way home and putting them in people's mailboxes before I realized that was illegal to do. But that was kind of my start. And I got let go. And this was about 4 months after I'd stumbled into flipping houses, being not wholesaling, but rehabbing houses. I wanted to be the guy buying from the wholesalers. Not sure exactly why, but I really wanted those before and after pictures, right? Those are really attractive to have. So I wanted to deal with the contractors. I wanted to deal with all the stuff you run into. And after flipping, a few houses, I was like, this is a pain. I don't like working with contractors. I don't like discovering another $30,000 in repairs, after I tear into a wall and find termites and all the other things that can come up. So then I discovered wholesaling. And I said, oh, maybe this is a better way. And so I kind of bolted that on the side. I didn't want to fully drop what I was doing, but I started wholesaling. I kind of tried to do it at the same time. I picked a virtual market, and I did virtual because I wanted to throw myself out there and I wanted to hire people. I wanted to outsource. And I knew that I was not going to do that unless I absolutely had to. I wanted to keep control over everything.
Yeah.
So I did that. It took me a few years.
And so
ramped up.
I want to pause you for half a second, because to be honest, that's really brilliant right there. How did you know, or what made you come to that conclusion that you're like, I need to do this outside of my regular market to force myself to do something?
Yeah, I don't know. I went to a seminar and it was virtual wholesaling that was kind of the talk. And I said, well, if I'm going to do virtual, I can't do it where I'm at. And where do I want to go? And I asked this guy, he gave me a couple markets. I said, well, Charleston sounds more beneficial to go visit than Knoxville, Tennessee does.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much all there was to it. There wasn't really, he could have done a bunch of, data polling and said, oh, well, Charleston's a great market and here's the reasons. Or he could have just randomly came up with two places. I don't know. I was so green. I didn't really know what to double check, and we just went with it. And so I liked the fact that I had to hire people. I had to find acquisitions agents. I had to get people to take the phone calls and go to the houses and work with real estate agents. And it just, because I was 5 hours away. So it just forced me to go do that. And that ended up taking a lot of my time, a lot of my money. And I had to pause all the rehabbing that I was doing back home.
Oh, interesting. So like out of necessity, as you went into this new market, that actually like slowed down the flipping business then?
To a halt. More than slowed down. It just stopped it. It was taking a lot of marketing dollars. I was finding out what running as a wholesaling business, we're running sales and marketing companies. So I was finding out what that required, all of that, no money required, no credit needed, all that stuff. I was finding out, yeah, maybe if you want to have a hobby, but if you want to actually run a business, you got to have some cash.
So, what year did you start with the wholesaling business? And then what have you grown it into today? Because I think our listeners and our subscribers, because, we're always talking about real estate investing and land development, they're going to be surprised like how big you built this and how massive of a machine that you have.
I appreciate it. It's been a journey, but we started wholesaling. I think I did my first wholesales in 2016. I maybe did a couple. 2017 is when we started actually doing a little bit of volume. And when I mean volume, I mean, one or two a month, but had a little bit more of a business model around it, an SOP around it. And yeah, the last couple of years we've done, or I guess the last few years, we've done about 2 million, so right around $2 million in gross sales. We have about 100 transactions a year between the markets that we're in. And then we're cherry picking off that line to buy rentals. We buy them and resell them on owner finance notes. We bolted a hard money lending company onto the side of that, hotels, rehabs, things like that. So it's kind of like I didn't start a wholesale business to wholesale. I started a wholesale business because I wanted to control the lead. I wanted to be the guy that had control of the direct to seller lead from the get-go and had the contract, because the person that has the contract has the power of what happens on the back end. And if I and a team that I build knows how to go out and get deeply discounted contracts of real estate, then I can choose whatever exit strategy I want. There's a multitude of ways that I could make money on the back end, but it all starts with that discounted contract up front.
Amen. Amen. I want to walk through that. So basically you're saying about 2 million in gross revenue, 100 transactions come in or that you work through. As those come in, what's kind of your deal hierarchy or investment strategy? Because I heard a lot of things that you just kind of went through, and I want you to break that down and give me the elementary version of that. Okay, if 10 deals come in, here's what we do with 10 of them specifically.
It's a great question. So we're looking at the wholesale revenue that it could create. We're looking at the wholesale revenue that it could create, which is if we were to buy it and clean it out and list it on the MLS. We're looking at the revenue that it would create if we went all the way through and completed the rehab and sold it to a retail buyer. So those are the capital gain options there. And then I'm also looking at certain factors of, do I like the area? Do I like the cash on cash return that it would create based on the rent minus expenses? And there are certain scenarios, usually cheaper houses, like our Columbia, South Carolina market for this, where it might work for a note where we buy it for cash. Let's say we buy it for $50,000. It's maybe a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and we resell it in close to as is condition, if not completely as is, for $90,000 to $100,000 on owner financing. We take a 15 to 20% down payment and we hold that 30-year debt on the back end. And that arbitrage of the discounted price that we paid minus the down payment that we got back in lowers our cost basis. So we're averaging, 18 to 20% cash on cash returns on those notes that are much more passive than even our rental property.
That's amazing. So no toilets, no tenants, no hot water tanks, and 20%.
You don't call the bank when your roof is leaking. I'll just say that. You replace it.
With 20% cash on cash returns, sir, that is gangster. Good job. And so how do you decide, when that's going to happen, when you're going to put a note? Is it just the price point and the cash on cash return, essentially, the yield that you're going to get? Or is it like, oh, this one's easy? Or is there a certain number like, oh, I want to do this many notes this year?
It's a lot of times it's your sub $150,000 houses that we're looking at. So usually it doesn't work above that number. There have been some cases where we've sold I had a flip that I also said, hey, I'll offer owner financing on it, for the right terms. It was like a $400,000 resale. And the lady came in and put $300,000 down basically, and I held the note on 100. So extremely conservative play on my side as far as a default rate, and 9.9% interest, 30-year note.
Yep.
No prepayment penalty. She has had some trouble with some credit issues getting a loan for the amount she needed. I actually almost bought her house that she was selling to come into mine,
Awesome.
but Open Door beat me out on that one. And yeah, so it usually works on the cheaper houses. Yeah, I like to do 5 or 6 of them a year as far as a number. But really it comes down to how cheap can we get into it for, and how much money are we going to have after the dust settles? Like, how much money is going to be locked up in it? Because I don't have a good leverage play on the notes yet. I haven't found a good assignment of collateral style loan with a bank to where I can say, hey, I went and created this 30-year note. Let me get 70% back on it, and I'll assign the note to you. So we're just leaving them all cash, as we created, and locking them up into good performing notes.
Yeah, phenomenal performing assets. Amazing job, sir. And so then kind of the next layer of that business, or the next evolution, is you're going to go find a bank, bundle your notes together, get them to give you some portion of it back, and then basically
go do it again.
Start that infinite return.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll go back and say, on the capital gain side, so that's more of the passive side. But on the capital gain side, when we're saying, all right, well, we might wholesale it and make $20,000. Well, would the wholesale make double that? If we can 2x our revenue on the wholesale side, then we'll wholesale it. If we can 2.5 or more x the wholesale fee for the rehab, then we'll rehab it. So those are kind of some of the numbers that we're looking at. It has to be at least a 15% return on capital. The rehab play has to be a minimum of $50,000 profit. So there's a couple caveats there, but we just have a calculator and a spreadsheet for what we're looking at, and we plug all the numbers in, and it tells us what we should do. Versus before, I would just sit and look at the numbers for an hour per deal and scratch my head on what the best exit strategy was. And I just created rules for it and made it a lot simpler.
I love that. So what I want listeners to hear right there is, we're all human, right? And so as humans, we're going to overanalyze, be over emotional, and overthink the process. So Parker, he's built a calculator that then removes that emotion from this process and allows him to make unemotional decisions quickly. Because in games like this, time is money. I mean, and so you have to basically work on constantly cycling it.
And we have, it's a mental drain too, right? So you want to get that problem solved. You want to get that solution out there and to your team, so they can continue to lead it. Because the longer it takes you to come up with the play for the property, the longer your team's just twiddling their thumbs, waiting on you, balls in your court. And, we've got 20 deals right now that are in that pipeline waiting to, are we going to go here? Are we going to rehab it? Are we going to wholesale it? Waiting on contractor numbers. So you've got to keep pushing these out and get them down the line of the direction they're going as quickly as possible, so you don't get a bottleneck.
Amen. Amen. Now I want to kind of switch gears for a second, because you're wildly successful, sir. What coaches have you found? What mentors, what inspiration, have you looked for and found to help you build a business like this?
Masterminds have been awesome. Masterminds have been really great. I discovered my first mastermind, which was the Boardroom Mastermind, run by Kent Clothier and his team. I've been in that since 2016. I have no idea how they found me. It was just this little nobody investor in Georgia, and I got a cold call from someone on their team saying, "Hey, you should check this out, and we'll let you know if you qualify." Right. And I ended up going to my first meeting. I think later, maybe 2017 might have been my first meeting, and been a member ever since. Also, Be Wealthy with Brett Tanner is another one. I think they play well together. They're slightly different, but really, really impactful. I've built amazing relationships through those two events. that I've done, that have been partnerships that have come from that. There's been deals, one-off deals that have come from that, and paid for the membership, and then some. So it's been really great. I think the biggest thing for me, you mentioned it a second ago. I live in the woods. I'm humble beginnings. My friends, they do well. But like, I don't live in Scottsdale, right? So it's just a little bit different. I don't drive down the road and see Lamborghinis and Range Rovers, on a regular basis. There's not high-end restaurants around me. It's just kind of quiet. It's nice. It's humble. It's not to downplay any of those other places, but it is easy to come back here and get comfortable really fast. And so, this is a blurred line that you have to be careful with when it comes to being happy with what you have and, thankful and content. And, there's this whole being blissfully dissatisfied that Andy Frisella, talks about sometimes, and Ed Milet and those guys. But I like that term. But there's also, like, to push, you have to desire more. You have to be slightly unhappy with your circumstances to want more and to go through the bullshit that we go through to get more. And it takes me going to these events once a quarter or twice a year to get slapped in the face and say, dude, you've been thinking too small. You got comfortable again.
Me too. Me too.
It's human.
Another amazing quote, D.L. Scholl, he said, and he wrote a book about it. It was called Pleased But Not Satisfied. And so I love thinking about that for my life. I'm very pleased with everything in my life, and I'm in love with it, and yet I'm unsatisfied. And on a certain level, almost like wandering in the desert unsatisfied. Like there's just this water that I want to drink, and I don't even know why. Like I'm driven to grow. But at the same time, I love what you're saying, because a lot of people get really wrapped up in this, and we need to be able to go home to that peace and quiet. I mean, you and I both have very similar ideas. I want a large piece of acreage. I want to live in the middle of it, have fun, room for the family. The dog can run around, things like that.
Yep.
What mistakes would you say that you've made along this journey? And like, hey, if you're listening,
sure you want to go down this road?
Yes, sir. If you're listening right now, how could you help either your younger self out or someone just getting started? What do they need to know?
I hate to say this because this is what so many people say, but they say it because it's true. It's get a mentor. It's and be specific with that mentor. And I'll add to this if I can, but being specific is find the person that is down the road from where you are now, and preferably that they are where you want to be, maybe not too far past where you want to be. You still want someone that can speak to you at the level in the weeds that you need spoken to, because there are some coaches that I've had in the past at certain times where they just kind of talked over my head. Not that they were giving me advice that was too complex, but they themselves had been out of doing the thing for so long, or so maybe not out of it, but just detached from it. They had outsourced themselves so long ago that they weren't dealing with the same problems anymore that I was dealing with. And so the advice is a little distorted. Does not mean it's bad advice, but it just means it may not be as applicable as if someone was telling you that was in the trenches a couple years ago versus a decade ago. So someone who is where you are looking to be, somewhere around that range, and also got there by doing what you're looking to do. So you have to have clarity in where you want to be in the future and clarity on how you want to get there. and then go find someone who has done that. I guarantee you, you're not doing whatever you're doing for the very first time. There's other people out there. Now there's industries where these people are easier to find, but you can always find them. So that's really the advice that I would give myself is I would have I'm blessed that I found this group, or this group found me so early on, that I was able to get outside of my comfort zone and kind of understand, man, this game I'm playing is way bigger than the game that I thought I was playing was. And seeing these people are playing it to a level that I didn't think it even could be played at. This is nuts. And so again, coming back and outside of the comfort zone, growing, expanding. And if I didn't have that early on, I would have taken a lot longer to get here. So that'd be one thing.
Sage advice. Like, get started, find a mentor, find the one that is been there, done that, doing that
Yeah.
you can go then model it. I think one of the mistakes we make is when we're not looking for that mentor, that coach, or that book, or even that partnership, we're forgetting that those things may have the ability to collapse time for us. They literally can warp us forward in time by taking someone else's distilled knowledge and making a jump. What
I'm going to say
where I
one more
want to
thing
Yes, go ahead,
before
please.
we transition. It is, don't get wrapped up in just making the cash. Don't get wrapped up in the capital gains. This happens a lot with wholesalers. This happens a lot with real estate agents. They get in that commission mindset, the next deal, the next deal, the next paycheck. And then your team builds, you scale, your expenses go up. And the next thing you know, you're doing 6-figure months and your expenses are 6 figures. And you're wondering, where's the money going? It's like I'm paying myself, maybe 60 grand a year plus, the distributions when it's, when they're there, and, for the W-2 S Corp type setup. And, you start spending all this money and you just kind of wonder, where's it all going? But if you are buying assets along the way, investing that money into areas, doesn't have to be a house, but in reinvesting that money as you're going to where it is growing alongside you, you'll be so much further 10 years down the road. I mean, I know guys that have just wholesaled and flipped and flipped. I'm not a rental guy. I don't do that. I just make $1 million a year. And then they get 10 years down the road and they've spent a bunch on expenses. They've spent a bunch on themselves. They've spent a bunch on depreciating assets. And, at the end of the day, it's a high paying job. Like that's exciting when you get started. But I will tell you, when you get started, assets will be cheaper at that point than they probably ever will be in the future.
Mic drop. Parker, that's so brilliant. See, we forget, because we believe we're always going to live forever. I always have more time. Tomorrow's never going to come. And we forget that inflation is going to always drive up the cost of assets. And it's been very clear here over the last few years, but I guarantee in 3 to 4 years, everyone's going to forget the lesson you just told them.
Yeah, it just happens. I have to remind myself, don't just wholesale every deal that's coming in. Don't just flip. Like this deal, I'm looking at a couple deals right now that are rentals and they're just not that attractive. But in 3 years, I'm going to be like, man, I'm glad I bought those because I got a wholesaled it and made 15 grand. And at the time it was so hard to make that decision of, do I want to trade, $15, $20, $25,000 for $400 a month? And 3 years down the line, I've just seen that happen now. About three, if we're talking 3-year increments, I've been doing this about 10 years. So I've seen that happen 3 different times and it's nuts. I mean, and every single time I'm like, man, I'm glad I didn't sell that one. So there are times to sell, there's a return on equity, that you can kind of look at and say, hey, what could you sell this property for today? If you wouldn't buy it at that price yourself, then you should sell it. I think there's some truth to that. I think there's some caveats there as well, but it's just holding assets is surprising when you put some years behind it.
holding assets is the key in order to creating freedom. Otherwise, like you said, you and I and a lot of other people, we just end up with a high paying job.
Yeah.
And then quite often, as your income goes up, you allow your expenses to rise right along with it. And then if you don't have that asset base, you've just had lifestyle creep and you now have to keep working. I want to switch gears in the same mistake vein though. So like what were you like, oh crap, this cost me way too much money. This was a bad mistake. Don't do this. What would that be?
Ooh. Man, we've gotten tied up in some rehabs that have been, just gotten away from us. That might have been investing into an area that we weren't just totally confident in. Usually, the first flip or so in an area might not go the way we wanted to. We've lost money. We haven't lost that much. We haven't lost money on, but probably three deals over the last probably 550 or so that I've done since I've started. So I love that number. But like you're learning or you're earning is what I say. And so the ones where we are losing money, we're definitely learning the most. So I'd say take that opportunity to learn as much as you can, but I'll also learn on the ones where you're making money too. But I think let me back up. I don't want to ramble on this. Everybody loses money from time to time on deals, but the biggest amount of money that I have lost is in regards to people on your team. And that relates to money that you've spent, money that I've spent on people in the wrong direction, that were in the wrong seat. Think traction, right person, right seat, wrong person, right seat. There's all the different, if you haven't read Traction, definitely go pick that book up. Great foundation for, setting up your teams. But in regards to that person being paid, and then also opportunity cost of not having the right person in that seat, and how much money we gave away or did not earn from having the wrong person in that seat. That's probably where I've held myself back to the largest degree, is people.
And that's one of the hardest parts of business is people. And
Yeah.
so I think
It
we
just takes
all,
time to learn that like, who you think that you've got great hires and you've got great people. And a lot of times you do, but like, you really don't know until you get that next better person. And you're like, oh man, I thought I knew. I thought he was the best. And then this guy just completely, showed him up. And it's just kind of it's seat time. It requires seat time to really kind of nail that.
I love it. How did you get such a good batting average? I mean, you said you lost money on like 3 deals out of 500. What's your methodology? Is it the calculator? Is it discipline? Is it accountability? That's an amazing batting average. How do you think you've achieved that?
Let me throw the caveat, or make it full circle. A lot of those transactions were wholesales. So it's kind of hard to lose money on a property you're not buying. So I definitely haven't, I can't say that I've done 550 plus or minus flips where I've gone on title and owned it. But there's a lot of double closes in there. There's a lot of buy and resells. There's wholesales, there's rehabs, rentals, notes, things like that. But the majority are wholesales. But to answer your question, I think I'm maybe a little more conservative at nature. I'm really big on formulas and just sticking to my numbers. And we've gotten really good at price reductions. I think that's a massive skill set to teach your team, is how to go in there and get the right reduction when it's needed to not blow up the deal. So we get good discounts. So in a nutshell, we buy right up front.
I love it. As humans, we will always discount simple. And so that's simple and just unbelievably wildly effective. We buy right up front. We buy conservative. We only do good deals. And what's funny is I'm digging for that golden nugget, this magic hack. And you're like, Bro, just do a good deal.
I, I always am looking for the, the sexy way to, the new sexy way to do something. And yeah, the golden thread, the golden nugget. And what does Brett say?
Yeah.
Making money is boring, or boring money. I can't remember the line, but it's something along the lines of like, the flashy thing is not going to get you where you want to go long term. It is the boring, steady Eddie kind of stuff. Boring businesses make lots of money.
Tons of money. And so I want everyone to understand, where are your businesses located? Where are you physically located? And then kind of what took you into these other markets that, quite honestly, some of them are really far from you.
Yeah. So I live in Georgia. I live in Watkinsville, Georgia, like an hour and a half east of Atlanta. Our first market was where I was rehabbing. That was in Atlanta, Kennesaw, Marietta, inside the perimeter. That was when we lived over in Atlanta. So that was is my local backyard market. That's where I started. That's what made sense to me. Then the virtual wholesaling idea came on board that I told you I heard about from an event that I went to in California. And I talked to a marketing guy and he said, hey, Charleston and Knoxville would be two good places to do this. I said the beach sounded more fun to visit. So we picked Charleston. A couple of years later, I said, why am I doing this just in Charleston when I live in Atlanta? Why don't I copy and paste and do the same thing here? So I copy and pasted my model that I had, hired some new people, and we started working those double markets. Scaled that for a couple of years. I thought that I had kind of reached a glass ceiling of leads in Charleston. This was a green point of view from me because this was not true. It was more so a sales problem that I had and a volume of sales people that I had. Brett Tanner helped me realize this. And I started bringing on more agents. So I doubled my agent load in each market. What do you know? Started doing more deals. Then we bolted on Columbia, South Carolina. I did this because I thought I needed new leads. So I'd already gone into Columbia. Then I doubled my agent count and just had them working Columbia also. Charleston and Columbia are about an hour and a half apart. Yeah. So they were pretty close. And then I ended up hiring an acquisitions agent out there that was local in Columbia. We've always kind of, side note, but we've always kind of been a hybrid of in-person appointments and phone, more heavy over the phone, but we do push on a regular basis to get salespeople inside the homes, make eye contact, go shake some hands. We understand discounts are better when you're in person, and your conversion rate and ability to build rapport and all those things go up. But then our fourth market was Charlotte, North Carolina. And I actually opened an office there in Charlotte. And a year later, I did not have an office in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I shut that office down. So that was a whole nother learning lesson and a lot of lost money that I did not mention earlier. So that is another thing. And that was I was about to say that was a clarity problem on my part. It was also a right person, wrong seat problem. Wow. But there were a lot of circumstances that I felt like I just needed to try that out. I'm young. Things were going good. I had the money to be able to try and create a new branch. I thought I had the right person for that role. And man, did I learn a lot during that whole process. A lot of stress, a lot of, really hard conversations, W-2, all of this was W-2 versus before it was all 1099, 100% commission type structure, so we had all the HR stuff. And I realized that I didn't want to own an office. I've done this virtually for too long for me to go down that road. And I didn't have the person that was willing to just go pedal to the metal all themselves and didn't really need me that much. Yeah. There was more of me that was desired in that scenario. And so I actually ended up repositioning this individual and he's my general manager now, and is just laying it down and is really giving me a lot of my time back. He's looking at things from angles that I wasn't even looking at them before, when it comes to KPIs, marketing, our sales strategy, all of these things. He's amazing. But I had him in the wrong seat before, and it took me a year to realize that. But a lot of learning lessons.
That's amazing. And so how, I mean, because that's one of the hardest maneuvers in business that you executed right there. When all of a sudden you have a person and they are talent, but on the wrong seat in the bus, and now all of a sudden they've got to be repositioned. What was that conversation like? Like how, I mean, because to be honest,
Conversation.
most business people fail right there epically with that talented individual and are unable to reposition them, and then they leave the company. Walk us through that. I mean, that's I want to understand this a little bit more.
Mm, you're gonna throw me right back in it, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
I thought I was past this, and here we are again. It was a lot. It was a lot of mental energy. My wife helped a ton, just being a sounding board to bounce ideas off of, to help me sugarcoat some of my feelings and understand them from a different, or see them from a different perspective. Side note, if you don't work with your wife in your business, or you're trying to decide if you want to or not, there are definitely some rules to put in place to help everything stay healthy. But man, it's super cool. It's been extremely beneficial for me, and I love having somebody that I can constantly have educated conversations with about what's going on in the business, where we want to go, and problem solving. But going back to it, it was a lot of conversations, a lot of hard conversations on what do you want. Speaking to the individual, what do you really want? Because he thought he wanted what I gave him, and again, maybe there's still may be some things that I'm not 100% clear on, but from my viewpoint, I gave him what he wanted, and there was not. As we went through that process together, he kind of learned maybe that wasn't exactly what he wanted, or the way that he wanted it, or the way that he wanted to use his skill sets the best. And I was also only 1 year into my relationship with him. So I thought I knew him, but I didn't really know him as well as I needed to give him that seat. So over that next year, I learned even more about him and what his skill sets were, and what really gassed him up, what fueled him, and what he was really good at. And so I realized during this, I hit myself on the head thinking about how many hints I was getting along the way, and just ignoring them because I didn't see what was right under my nose. I just
We've all
didn't
been
see
there.
it, or I was refusing to see it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we both saw it together, with a lot of just hits on the side of the face. I finally got it, and we structured something that made sense for both sides. I think the big piece was that I made him know that I saw the value in him. I just felt like he was in the wrong seat, and that was my fault. And I needed grace and patience on his side to help me figure out where he needed to be, because I knew that there was a seat for him. I didn't even really know what a GM was or did. There was also lots of outside help from people that I've met through my masterminds and have done all of this many times before me. And so it was really just kind of, I reached out to my network, and a lot of long conversations that luckily he was willing to give me the patience to go through until we found the right fit. But man, I've heard it a million times. And after this whole scenario, it rang so much louder to me that the having the right people is the key to the vault with entrepreneurship.
1000%. I love how you mentioned your wife and including and having her be a part of the business and drawing boundaries. Walk me through, so you have a family, and then you decided, hey, I want to buy a large piece of acreage.
Mhm.
Walk us through that because I think this is an amazing dream and thing that you accomplished. And then, of course, this rings really true to my personal heart. And so, because you had to make a little bit of a sacrifice, a little bit of a change, you had to negotiate a crazy deal. Um, Talk us through that real quick.
Okay. Um, we realized we didn't. I moved to Colorado with my wife. We kind of did a little staycation out there before we started, the period of trying to have kids. And right when we came back from Colorado, we realized that we didn't want to live in Atlanta anymore. I grew up in Athens, and so luckily she wanted to go back there as well. Her family had a farm that was not too far from Athens, so she was kind of familiar as well. And we moved back. I say that because we wanted to build, but we just couldn't find anything that made sense. We wanted to buy, but we couldn't find anything that made sense. We utilized all the tools that we learned in our space. We did direct mail campaigns, cold call, pulled the list, all the stuff, went by, made a list on GIS of clicking on map parcels that we thought were attractive to build on, and did the mail campaigns and everything. Nothing really came of it. So we just grabbed a rental. We moved. And when we lived here, we were always looking. We finally found a piece of land that was a 128 acre tract. And the gentleman that bought it, great development play. He chopped it up into a 16 acre tract, and then a 10, a 10, and a 10. That was all on the road frontage. And then he kept about 86 acres in between our 16 that we bought and our neighbor's 10. That was like a 100-foot strip, and it went all the way back and opened up and goes back to a big river and all this stuff. And so he sold those front lots and made a small profit off of what he paid for the whole 128 acres, and then kept that 86 acres for free for himself.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this guy's a baller. And I'd love to own that land one day. So I set that seed up front. We bought the 16 acres. We built over the next year and a half. And, every time I reached out to him, he's like, oh, thanks. But, I really have no intentions of ever selling it. He actually lives like 4 or 5 lots down. And his play was to buy this one remaining piece in between his lot and this little, he drew this little panhandle when he chopped it all up. So a 100-foot strip all the way over, and then another strip that went all the way behind the 10, 10, 10 lots, and it joined over here. And if he could get this last parcel over here, his lot would connect to the 86 acres. So he could drive his side by side over there and stuff like that. Well, for one reason or another, I got a phone call one day. He owns a Chick-fil-A over where I live. And he said, hey, I want you to come over to the Chick-fil-A. I had something I wanted to show you. And he told me that he was going to, we sat down at a table and he showed me a plat map of like all of the parcels that he's like, yeah, I'm planning on parceling this up and doing this. And kind of like right behind where your lot ends would be like parcel 1 and then 2. And then back by the river, these would be the big ones. And I don't know why he told me this really. I don't know what his angle was of telling me this, but my heart was just dropping, sinking. I was just like, I just built my dream home on 16 acres. And now I'm going to have to listen to houses get built for the next 3 years behind me, swinging hammers. There's this road gravel driveway that goes, that's maybe 100 yards out this window that I'd be seeing trucks just back and forth, building, all the stuff. And I would not be able to live here. I would literally have to sell and go find somewhere else, because that would just eat away at me over time, knowing that I wasn't able to figure out how to buy that acreage back there. So A lot of stuff just happened. I think God just had the puzzle pieces fall into place because there's really no other way that it could have happened. The timing of interest rates going up, he was planning on basically getting it papered up, like
Yep.
shovel ready, and then selling it to a builder. He had it listed for a while. Interest rates were going up. It wasn't selling. Price reduction wasn't selling. In the meantime, I was making cash offers, making owner financed offers. Granted, it was nothing I could actually afford to pay cash with. The loan options for buying just the dirt were like 50% down, high interest. It just made no sense for me to leverage it. My wife and I were running through like, okay, well, what if we were meeting with the count or the city to say like, could we build Airbnb yurts back there and rent, like, should we get cows and try and pay off the note so we don't have to, so we can afford the note payment. We were getting real creative on how we could make
Yeah.
it work to where we wouldn't have, 8 houses being built behind us. And it just kind of ended up all rolling in the direction that I wanted it to roll, between him not getting offers and me just being, my mom used to tell me the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And
Yep.
damn, I was the squeaky wheel in this scenario. I just wouldn't go away. And I think also I don't know this because we haven't talked about it, but I feel like maybe he kind of wanted to do me a favor a little bit. There may have been a little bit of like, hey, this would be a cool thing to do, and I'm still going to make some money, and he can get, what he wants. Shoot, maybe his wife even had a little bit to do with it. I really have no idea. I'll probably talk to him about it one day. He's still my neighbor. But at the end of the day, it happened. And he bit on a owner financed agreement after we went back and forth about 600 times on it, trying to come up with the right terms. But that was all the skill set that I built with, through my job here. So, that was another little puzzle piece that, like, my education brought me to the ability to even have the idea of offering this. And then when it came to negotiations, how I could negotiate to still make it right for, me and my family. And we ended up closing, like last April. It's been about a year and a few months, and we're just extremely happy.
I love it, and I love that I was able to play a small part in this and
You
have
did.
some
You did.
development discussions and, what could we do? How could we do it? But what I want everyone to get here is that Parker had this idea and he didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how to finance it, wasn't sure, couldn't figure out how to make it work. But he didn't give up, and because he wanted to accomplish something for his family. So he just kept knocking at that door, just knocking and knocking and knocking until somebody answered, in this case, the landowner, and said, you know what? The way you're presenting it today now works for me. So often in real estate and in investing, we always get this idea like if I can't win or make it happen the first time, it's over. When some of the best deals happen over time, how long did you work on this with him for?
6 months, probably about 6 months. Yeah.
And how many times did you have a conversation with him in order to put this together for your family?
Between text messages and emails and phone calls, and then a lot of phone calls with his agent because he had a listing agent as well. And so there was a middleman at play, but probably about 100 conversations total, maybe. It was a lot, but like I wasn't counting because the end, not only the end goal being so, like, what do we teach with sales? Help them go away from pain and towards pleasure.
Yes.
Like, there was no larger pain in the short term in my mind from that happening the way that he saw it happening. And there was no greater pleasure than if it did work out the way that I wanted it to long term. Like, it wasn't like, oh, it would be so cool right now. It wasn't that. It was, I have a newborn son recently at the time. And like, I was just seeing all of these missed opportunities of riding dirt bikes and, fishing in the river. And like, it was all of that missed stuff of like, oh, well, now what am I going to have to ask him if we can, hey, can we go back to, the river? And like, no, I wanted that to be mine. Like that was going to be an internal failure for me personally if I was not able to work that out.
Amen. Amen. Let's switch gears. You had mentioned that like South Carolina has started to pass a bill to make it illegal for wholesaling. Walk us through what's happening there and what you think that means for other states and other areas.
We're doomed. It's over. Got to go get a job at Kroger now. It's interesting. It's going to be a big shakeup. In South Carolina, it has happened. So the bill was passed about 3 weeks ago. I believe it's 4754, something like that. And essentially what they did is they said, in order to wholesale, you must be a licensed real estate agent in the state of South Carolina. Then they said, if they stopped there, it would have been fine. Little hurdle, some education, not a big deal. But they came around and said, now if that's how they get jurisdiction over you. And then they said, if you're a licensed agent in South Carolina, you can have absolutely nothing to do with wholesaling. And so, yeah, there's a lack of education and understanding of like what that means. And there was a lot of like, oh, well, it says this and that's kind of gray. So you could do this. And, how are they going to prove what marketing is? And there's all these things that you can do to quote unquote, get around it or play in the gray. But I think they either haven't had a conversation with an attorney that actually understands it. And that's really what it comes down to. But it's all going to be intent based. Like I understand, like you can play in the gray as long as you want, but this is my opinion. This is backed by the NAR, the National Association of Realtors, I believe has funded this almost entirely to get pushed through legislature because they're all pissed at wholesalers for taking their commissions. And they think that that real estate agents can provide the same type of service that wholesalers can to these distressed sellers that are trying to walk away from the closing table and have massive probate issues and have tenants that aren't paying the rent, won't get out, and all these things. Agents don't want to fool with that stuff. They just drop the listing. It's not worth their time. Usually the houses we're dealing with are so lower priced anyway that it's not worth their time for the paycheck. But we can actually flip the house and make money in a different way, not just a percentage off the sales price. So that's why it makes sense for us. But there is going to be a massive impact to the seller as well on this, because this just created it's the wrong way to say it. This just created a scenario where there is a larger, how do I say this? There's not, the sellers aren't going to have as many options. I mean, that's really in a simplistic form is you just reduce the amount of options a motivated seller has to sell their house. I mean, because if you were to take the investor pool, right, and say how many are wholesalers and how many are actually cash buyers, I would say 20 years ago, it was like 85, 90% cash buyers, 10% wholesalers. What would you say it is now?
That's a really good question. I actually haven't thought about that. I'd say a large percentage is wholesalers.
More than half, right?
Yeah, I feel very comfortable with that. Absolutely.
So even if we just stuck with that, let's just stick with 50%. You just ripped 50% of the people that are out there making offers out of the equation for the seller. And then that 50% that you ripped out, who's going to make the higher? First of all, let me step back. Who's going to make a higher offer? A wholesaler or a cash buyer that's buying it for themselves to flip, that has to go on title?
Actually, the wholesaler, because the wholesaler only needs to make a smaller margin. And
the biggest piece is the wholesaler gets to throw shit against the wall to see what sticks before they before they enter any exposure, right?
Yeah.
So who's going to be more conservative? Who's going to win the bidding war? When it's a wholesaler against somebody who has to know their numbers because they're actually going to buy it and flip it. Why would the wholesaler not just go 5K above, 10K above? Because who knows? Maybe it will work. Maybe somebody on my email list will bite on this. But when that's no longer an option to market a property before you have legal ownership interest in it, then that's not an option. So now everyone has been forced to close, go on title, get insurance, turn on utilities, right? Actually do the flip. You can relist it immediately. Once you own it, you can put it on investor lift. You can do all the same stuff. But why would you if you own it? Just put it on the MLS. That's where the best buyers list is going to be. So you reduced the buyer pool, and the buyer pool that remains has much more risk than the other half of the people did before. So this is going to drop the price to the seller, in my opinion, considerably. Less options and less money because the buyer is going to have more risk. So there's some effects that will have a lag effect that I don't know if I understand all of them. A lot of these deals we're going to be hitting the MLS now instead of hitting your email inbox if you're a buyer. I don't know what that does to prices. I don't know if it's enough of an influx to where it actually brings prices down. I don't think it would be. But I think that my competition is going to drop drastically over the next 6 months. I think there's a lot of people that are just going to go. I mean, some of my friends in the business are talking about getting out, trying to sell their business, going to go do something else. I've talked to virtual wholesalers outside of South Carolina that just turn their marketing off overnight. Why would you continue to wholesale virtually in South Carolina when you can easily go to you'll dump more money into one of your other 5 or 6 states that it's not illegal, right? So that's an easy decision if South Carolina is not your only play. We are virtual. We are in multiple markets, but South Carolina provided the largest percentage of my income for the last 3 years. So we are having to make some serious changes. And last month was a good month, and we're still throwing a lot in the pipeline, but my revenue is drastically getting pushed down the line. This month is probably going to be a considerable loss for us on the P&L. I have, like I said, there's a lot of activity still happening. We've locked up 11 deals this month as of the 14th of the month. And, a lot of some good hotels, some good rehabs. I've got 3 rentals that we locked up last month that I'm going to hold long-term, but man, there's going to be a cash flow problem over the next couple months. So we're trying to dump more money in a few new markets in North Carolina. We're looking at going to Greensboro, the Triad area, Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem, as well as Charlotte. So hopefully we can, pick our wholesale volume up there. And then we're going to continue to stay in South Carolina for internals. But imagine what this does to your cost per deal. I'm definitely not going to buy everything that I'm able to get under contract at a discount. We've got some mobile homes two mobile homes that we got under contract recently that are kind of on the outskirts, and they don't have the best discount. Could I probably find somebody and rip 10K on each of them? Probably so, but I'm not going to buy them. So we're either going for a big price reduction, or I'm going to terminate them. So what does that do to my cost per deal when now I'm buying 60 to 70% of the deals that we contract, along with the termination rate that already comes along with this business? I'm just going to have to spend more money to do the same amount of deals. And it's going to absolutely kill cash conversion cycle, being the amount of days it takes on average from lead intake to money in my pocket on the back end. I'll stop there and kind of go into some.
No, this is great. This is great because we all run into these things where something in our business forces us to pivot or change or add new things on. So I know that you've also moved into the hard money space and you've been lending money. How did that come about? What's that looking like? And then, what do you see the future there?
I'm going to pin that really quick.
Yeah.
I'm extremely excited about hard money lending because of exactly what's happening right now. But let me go back and just address a couple things because I forgot to finish my thought
Oh,
on
perfect. Let's
the
go.
bill. And the installment sale is something that a lot of people are mentioning as, interestingly enough, someone on the board that, in my opinion, played, whether he says he recused himself completely or not, I think he played somewhat of a role in getting this bill passed. Or I won't say that. He was in the room. He's in the rooms, and now he's selling a course on how to do it a different way. It's kind of murky, but either way, Gary Pickering is pushing the installment method, and this is essentially buying it on owner financing. I'm not saying that that's the wrong way to go about this. It is a way to get into a deal with low to no money down.
Mm-hmm.
But that method's always been there. We could always buy on owner financing, right?
Yeah.
It's still requiring you to be the owner. You can't unwind that deal by sending a TNR, a termination and release. Like, you own it. You might not have paid for it yet, but you own it. So you got to know your numbers better. You are entering that exposure. You're getting insurance. You're turning on utilities. You got to figure out the right exit strategy, all the stuff. You're just saving some money on lending. You're not having to bring all that cash to close up front. Maybe it's a $5,000 down payment, and then I'm going to give you the remaining $145,000 if it's a $150K purchase price. I'll give you that in 90 days. Okay. Well, that's a cool strategy, but not if I'm coming behind you and offering 150 cash, and I'll give it all to the seller up front. So for the well-capitalized business owners, they're going to walk all over everybody that is pushing the installment method. So it's being pushed as this saving grace to wholesaling. And I just want to make a note that I don't see it that way at all. It's another option that's always been in the tool belt.
Yep.
And now if you're not capitalized, you just are handicapped to have to use it. And you're going to get crushed when anybody's offering all cash, because cash is king.
Always has been. Always has been. Brilliant again, sir. Switch us over to hard money. Tell us about that part of the biz.
All right. So hard money is awesome during this part of the journey in South Carolina, because how much more important is capital now? It's insanely important. Everyone has to buy the house. And if you're going up against somebody that's doing installment sale versus cash, the person that's bringing all cash or offering all cash is probably going to win that deal. So what are they going to need? They're going to need cash to close the deal. And in order to do volume, which these wholesalers that are, maybe some of them are now turning to, okay, now I'm going to be a rehabber. Now I'm going to be a wholesale all these deals. In order to do that, they're going to have to be much more capitalized. So I think in South Carolina, there's just going to be a massive influx of demand for quick capital. So we've got some products for, your 6 months traditional hard money loans. And then we've got some products for the buy and resells, or, quick flips, if you will. And we're just really pushing the throttle down on that. We closed 6 loans for about $800K last month, with a goal of having 5 million out by the end of the year, about 1.6 right now. And I just love the business. It's quiet. It doesn't take much overhead. And I'm going through the P&L. There were last year was a tough year for a lot of flippers, me included. And last year, I just remember going through the P&L, and it was the first year that I would go through and we just had loss, win, loss, win, loss. And it was just, we came out on top last year, but man, it was a rocky road. It was a roller coaster, ups and downs. It was robbing Peter to pay Paul. It was taking out some lines of credits just to pay marketing. It was just all this stuff that, all these things that worked in years past, all of a sudden they seemed to not work anymore. And I was like, is it me? Like, am I not learning fast enough? And is there something somebody else knows that I just didn't get the memo on? This is hard. It's like, oh no, it's just business. I was just too green to understand it. Like I was looking at this piece of the trajectory, and really, it's this, and I was just right here. And so I need to back up and understand. A lot of people were having these conversations, and it was good to kind of compare these times to, back during the last recession. And it was just another great learning experience.
So I want to pontificate on what you just said, though. And I think this happens more to males too, by the way. When something in the market causes us to be forced to pivot, or the market fundamentally changes, the first thing we do is we go, what am I doing wrong? And
Yeah.
then after we go through those phases of grief, we then come to the realization like, okay, what do I need to change inside of my system? How does my business need to pivot? And like you were saying, how do I open up the aperture from like, I'm only looking right here to like widen and stepping back? Brilliant,
Right.
brilliant, brilliant. What I want to dig into with the hard money stuff is, as you got that out into the market, what's like your total, yield that you're getting? And then is this all private capital? Are you bringing capital in from other individuals? What's that looking like?
Yeah, great question. What we're lending at is 13% annualized, 3 loan points up front, and a funding fee around $1,000 and some other small fees. Our yield, it really depends on what cash is in. It's closer to that 18% range if it's my money. And we can turn that twice. So obviously, that how that affects, with the velocity of money there, your overall return. And then that just blows up when you're using other people's money. So I started with my own cash, a deal here, a loan there. Then that money obviously ran out pretty fast. And I started raising private money with, my outside, kind of inner circle and outer circle network. I've asked you about my kind of push on social media and how to do that. And while I'm not really a social media fan, it is great for bringing in outside capital. It's great for just letting people know what you do and letting them know, hey, I have places for you to stick your unused capital into, and I can generate an attractive return that you maybe didn't even know was possible. And I can do that on a consistent basis because I need money for these deals. But as it pertains to hard money lending, lending or raising the money around 8%, 9%, lending it out at 13% plus the points. I did obtain a warehouse line of credit, kind of taking that next level in Atlanta. So working on that angle. And while it's not the best terms, we got about $750,000 on it with a floating rate and, some small fees for each loan. But it's a foot in the door loan with the understanding of, hey, let's do a couple loans, let's let this mature, and then let's double or triple it. We can make the fees more attractive. And, we'd like to build that to a 10, 15 million plus line there with that bank who's already familiar with doing a similar type of product with builders. So they know the angle that we're going.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. And as, someone who knows you and gets the great pleasure of watching you grow and get better all the time, your social media has gotten a million times better. And like all of us, we're learning this idea of storytelling. Because a lot of us, we're amazing entrepreneurs, we're good salespeople, but then all of a sudden you come to this digital world and we're playing in a whole new space, and you got to learn to communicate different. You got to learn to deliver different. And we got to also personally get over the fear of this little black eyeball staring at me. And then what's everyone else going to think when I just throw it out there to the world? So I feel and understand you there, sir.
Yeah,
Any
I still feel this lens. It's just burning the side of my face. It's strange, but it's a great way. I mean, the internet just absolutely changed the game for absolutely everything. And it's a tool just like AI and, chat GPT, and, it needs to be used, and there are right and wrong ways to use it.
Any closing things that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about today?
I think just pressing on the overall importance of making capital gains and then ensuring you have a plan in place to roll those capital gains into passive streams. because that's what's going to create confidence. That's what's going to create longevity. It's going to give you your buffer. I think confidence is probably the biggest thing of knowing that you're creating assets that are building behind you while you're off creating more capital gains to then go roll them into additional assets for more passive income. And then, as I've heard Brett say a lot of times, eventually you get to the point where your assets are spitting off so much cash flow that those are the things that are spitting off the capital, not capital gains, but it's spitting off so much cash flow. Not only is it paying for all your personal expenses, your, with the icing on top, vacations, all the stuff, but it's just building and building in the account to where you're using that cash flow to go buy more assets or more down payments on additional assets with good debt. It's kind of wealth education. It's just financial, overall financial literacy. I think that's the most untaught thing in our world today, is just financial literacy. I don't understand why that is not taught more in schools. I know this is talked about a lot sometimes, but it's mind-boggling. I don't get why we focus so much on social studies and not on how to balance a checkbook or read a profit loss statement or initial savings and basic investment structures. I don't know.
Amen.
The only class that I took all the way through college that was kind of along, and I had to step outside the box a little bit to find this class, was franchise management. And it was my favorite class in all of college. And I probably learned the most from this one thing. And it was on, buying franchises and what that franchise management looks like, what the different fee structures are like for different businesses, which ones are more passive than others. And we had to do a project on it, and it was pretty cool. But I just think that's mind-boggling that was the only thing that was anywhere close to that realm. And my degree was business management. So I don't know, topic for another day.
Everyone, hear what my friend Parker said. Create a business that kicks off capital gains, create passive income coming from some other type of assets in order to obtain your freedom number. In other words, there's cash flow coming in that supports lifestyle, business, and legacy and wealth growth. And Parker, remind everyone where you're at and how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, Facebook, Parker Stiles. Pretty simple. I'm not on the other ones yet. So reach out to me. I'd love to have some communication with you, see if there's any commonalities or synergies that we can build off of.
And geographically, where are you located and what areas do you serve the most?
I'm in Georgia, and our main markets are Atlanta, Charleston and Columbia in South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina.
Thank you for coming today, sir.
Thanks, Anton.